All right, in these videos, we're just going to go through the workshops in the 2D class, which is posted online. You should have all the materials you need to do these workshops, including a step-by-step recipe on how to work through them. The link is down in this video description. And this first video is really simple. We're just going to load a terrain, but it's just going to kind of get you in the software early in the program. So let's go load a terrain. So here we are in RAS, and the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to make a project. We don't even give you a project in this one. So we're going to go in here and call this project new terrain. And you'll notice I give it this title, and then we kind of automatically make a file name out of it. All of the other files, the geometry files, the flow files, all of those, they're all going to have this same basic name but different suffixes. Like the geometry file is going to be geo1 and so on and so forth. But right now we're just going to create a terrain. And it says, hey, this is going to be in US customary. Sorry if those aren't your favorite units. They're not my favorite units either, but they're mainly what we work in and what this workshop is in. And then you're not going to do any of this stuff for 2D. You're going to go straight to RASmapper. Most of what you do in 2D is going to be in RASmapper, which is our kind of homegrown GIS. And the very first thing we need to know is where we are in the world. We need a projection. This is not totally intuitive that when you open RAS, the first thing you need to do is go to this project set projection menu, but it's just got to become habit. This is just the way this has got to be. And so if you don't know your projection, you can go to spatialreference.org and you can search for where you are in the world. And this is a pretty good tool to find a projection that you want. Like for example, I've been in the Willamette over here. And so if you go to the Willamette, there's a couple of projections you should be thinking about there. If you go here, it tells you kind of where in the world you are to make sure that you're in the right place. And then there's all these different types of files. We want the .prj file. If you just go here, it'll download it and you can use it. All right, and so we give you a projection file in the workshop, but that's kind of how you think about that. The other way I think about that is any shapefile has a projection. If you have a shapefile of any kind that's in the projection that you want, it has a PRJ file. And so if you just use the PRJ file of a shapefile that you're already going to use in the project, it will generally put you in the right projection. But we're going to go and find the projection. We always put our projections in a folder called projection or GIS data. And I usually title it projection. And sometimes you'll get this GDAL warning. We're using a third-party software called GDAL to do our transforms, and they have a couple of quirks. Usually it's fine. And so I'll say OK. All right. And so then I want to import my terrain data. I've got a TIFF file here, the digital elevation model we need. I want to import that, but I'm already using the wrong verb. I keep talking about importing my DEM, but the title of this workshop is you want to create a terrain. A terrain is a model of the physical world in RAS. You import DEMs into the terrain, but you're going to create a terrain. So this is a little counterintuitive because you're going to start at the bottom of the stack, but the world kind of rests on the bottom of everything. So that's where you're going to go. And you're going to right click on terrain and say create a new RAS terrain. And then if you just want to make something, you can create it empty and import or draw things later. But we're going to go to this plus button and we're going to add this base terrain. And if we want to change the name, we can open this and we can call it base only. And we'll create. And this will show you kind of the stitching it's doing and how it's like converting the DEM into a terrain. But if it's small like this one is, it won't take very long. And so you can see here's our terrain. And now you can double click on your terrain and you get different ways to look at this. You can change the hillshade factor to make it kind of more pronounced or less pronounced. You can plot plot contours and you can change your contour interval. But my favorite thing to do is to update with Legend View. And what that does is if you don't update with Legend View and you zoom in, well, you actually can get so that the color doesn't tell you anything. But the other way to get to this, you can double click on it or you can right click and go to image display properties. If you do update image view, then it will use the complete range of colors to show you the difference at whatever scale you're at. So that's my favorite tool there. Now, what do you immediately see that is wrong with this terrain? Well, water can't flow through these. Like, the bridges are in the terrain. It doesn't see the opening under the bridges. And so we are going to either need to model these as bridges, which comes much later in the class, or we're going to need to remove these bridges so water can flow freely through here. You know, another thing that happens pretty often, you get a terrain that looks like this, right? You have a lot of detail in the overbanks, but what do you have in the channel? Well, this is LiDAR data, and the LiDAR is just returning the water surface. You have no bathymetry here. And one of the kind of most elementary mistakes that people make with modeling is they just say, well, that's all the terrain I have, I'm going to run this. Well, you have no channel, so you have no model. And so you have to go in and create a channel. And we have another video on how you do that with cross sections, but we've created a channel already. We have two different terrains that have a channel. So now we're going to create another terrain, and this time we're going to import the base, but we're also going to import the channel. And we're going to make sure we want the channel on top, because basically whichever one on top is the one that's going to get priority. So it's going to overwrite the other one. And so now when we create our terrain, you'll see that the channel now has priority in its domain. And we have a compound terrain with a channel and a floodplain that we can now use for 2D modeling. All right, my name is Stanford Gibson. I'm the Sediment Transport Specialist on the HEC-RAS team, and this video was funded by the H-Agency SET program.